Yes.
Okay.
So, so
So
maybe you
what,
may comment about how to read articles.
so I have been told over and over again by different people that the way that you skim an article is that you read the introduction, you skim through some other parts, you actually skip the statistics part, then you go to the discussion and the limitations at the end. And so I was glad that we had both of the assignments last week, because I know that we're going to have to do that part. We can't skip it in real life. When we write our own dissertation, we have to know what and why we're doing it. And I think last week's assignment was the first time that I kind of got an idea, like, hey, wait, I'm not going to have to skip that part. I'm actually going to have to, I'm going to be able to write that part because I'm getting a better understanding of what that part is.
Yes, yes, exactly. Exactly. Thank you for this reflection, me. And see, that's interesting what you said, and I can relate to that. Uh, that you're looking at the beginning and the end, right? But if you look from a from another perspective, many times we would actually mostly focus on the numbers, to be honest with you, because at the end of the day, that's typically what's new. The lit was important too and has ideas in it, and but then it leads to a study, right? And then whatever the people find out is are usually interpretations of the numbers in a quantitative article, right? Qualitative but qualitative too, right? You interpret the qualitative data.
Well, I think that that's the misnomer, right? You were Because we're comfortable with words, we go words, 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 numbers, psh, and more words. Oh, thank you. There's more words. But if we actually understand, the problem is we don't understand what the numbers mean. And so that's what I've always been worried about, is that we're then supposed to replicate something we actually don't understand. So I know we had stats one and stats two, but all along it's kind of been like blah 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 magic blah 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 blah. And so I was glad to find out what the magic part was, because I really felt like I was really feeling uncomfortable about getting to that on my own. Like I said, it's the first time that I felt like, oh, this is something that I'm actually going to, not only am I going to do, but I'm going to know how to do.
Oh, great. Yeah. And that's part, and thank you also, Mimi, for opening up that you were a little uncomfortable, right? I think that's with many of your colleagues, it's the same thing. And that was with many of faculty was probably the same thing as well, right? I know for sure with me it was exactly the same thing. And then after when you get more comfortable with it, right, then you start looking more into the details. And just to show you guys really quick this article that we discussed this week, right? Um, right. I'll give you guys an example of if I would have never seen this article, I will show you really quick how I would skim it, right? If
Okay.
you guys are curious about that. Um, because right, so the first thing is obviously I would look at this title, right? And okay, then honestly, I was hey, do I know anybody? Right. Right? So it's also a bit of a social thing. And then I would probably read the abstract, right? Hey, what is this all about? Or coaching based leadership style, assessment. Okay. All right, all right. So I see, okay, they did two studies. One is about the development and validation. Okay, they have a sample of 706, right? Then I would always say, okay, that's a pretty good sample for Spain and Latin America. Okay. So now I'm thinking, well, this is probably done in Spanish, right? That's just the thought. But anyways, then the final instrument is 16 items, 4 factors. Okay. Study 2, the relationships between CBL and work-related outcomes in a sample of 252 employees. Okay, now I'm like, all right, this is interesting, I'm thinking, right? They had a first study that just looks at the development and validation of the scale, and then there's something more substantial about that relationship between different constructs, right? And then, okay, the results from structured craving model reveal that CBL is positively related to work engagement, to the mediation of psychological capital, and to in and extra role performance to work engagement. Okay, interesting. Findings help answer important questions about right? Whatever it is. So now, see, I would probably just kind of skim this to see what theories do they cite. For right now, it also depends kind of what I'm looking at, right? If I'm really interested in coaching-based leadership, I might be reading this in more detail. But if let's say I'm really interested in something that can, in work engagement, I might be interesting, right? Oh, and then I was always interested in psychological capital because hope, which is a topic I research, is part of psychological capital, right? So long story short, I might be just kind of looking through this, but I might be going forward here and see, all right, let's see here, the outcomes. All right, I would probably want to know work engagement. How did they measure it? Oh, I see. Okay, I know these guys, or I should say these are familiar to me. All right. I don't know too much about in-role and extra work role performance. All right, PsyCap. All right, then I'm looking, okay, they have this study. I'm familiar with this study, Lutyens 2010. All right, I'm kind of looking, what else do they cite? Okay, I'm familiar with this study. Okay, let's go on. All right, let's go into the method section. Sample 1, Argentina. I'm just kind of getting a sense of who is that, right? Who are the people that participated? The size of organization range from 2 to 74 employees. Okay. Right. So maybe if I'm interested more in bigger companies, then I'm already maybe thinking, okay, organizational tenure was from 0.6 to 58 years. I'll say, all right. Age.
So do those kinds of metrics skew results when you have, if your study is looking at people being, I don't know, not thrilled about their supervisor, not something about work. If you're in the company for 58 years, you better somehow you've stayed there. So isn't that going to skew your, those are somewhat outliers, right?
Yeah, that I mean, if we're very specific, we don't really know, right? Just basically, but then we see, oh, the standard deviation here, right? Average is 33 years with a
That's
standard deviation of,
a
right
It's a
lot.
big
now,
standard image.
Yeah.
right? Because of this thing, we know, okay, there's a big range here, right? And so probably that 58 is an outlier. But it just gives you more of a sense of, you know, this
12 points. That I think that's the age, right? And the next one is 12.7 years is how long? With an average of 12.7.
Oh, yeah, yes, yeah.
Yeah,
Sorry,
yeah.
I'm looking at the wrong thing. Yes.
Yeah.
So you could say, all right, people are, I mean, that looks kind of, yeah, doesn't look very particularly special to me, right? But we can see here, okay, what's the distribution? Just gives you a better idea of who are these people, right?
Mhm.
For me here, the main thing that stands out is that, okay, there are people from Spain and Latin America, and they're more from smaller companies, right? That's kind of what I see. I don't know what does anything else stand out to you?
No.
Right, but then also sample two, right? And that's kind of just and what I would notice, okay, about half of them are female. Great, right? That's something. Sometimes you have studies where, for example, I did once a study where I had like over 90% males, but it was because of the profession. It was a mechanical profession, and so I had mainly males, right? And so then when I discussed these results, I always had to kind of put in as a caveat, well, it is a study that's mainly that had mainly male participants, right? But yeah, long story short, right? I'm looking at the sample, and then I'm kind of, I'm probably gonna read this a little bit more closely, but pretty soon, okay, the scales, right? I'm gonna kind of see these scales check out, and I'm really looking at, Cronbach's alphas, right? The rule of thumb that I use is it should be higher than 0.70, right? But if it's a little lower, that's okay, right? But these, for example, these are very high reliabilities. That's great. These are okay, right? These are not bad at all. Work engagement as well, right? And then probably I would see, okay, which scale did they use, right? If I'm interested in work engagement, now these guys use a Utrecht work engagement scale with Schaufeli, Bakker, and Salnova. Those guys are known for work engagement research, right? And so if I don't know the scale, I might be looking, okay, what are the actual items, right? And that's why it's good to have, well, here to actually report all of them at my work. If I'm bursting with energy, I'm enthusiastic, right? Sorry. They have 3 dimensions with 3 items each, but here they just give us a sample item, right? And that's good to kind of see, to get an idea, right? So just the way they present their information is how I would recommend it. Then we got the statistical analyses, right? And then we get a little bit more detail, which I'm not going to go into this too much now, but have you guys had structural equation modeling? Should talk a little bit? No?
No.
Okay, so you might,
Uh-oh.
so I might do you'll see it later on, right? There'll be information about this. Long story short, I'm not going to say more now, but there's fit indices, which this is what this is, right? And the fit indices, right? The goodness of fit basically are different measures that tell you how good is your model. How good does your model fit the data, right? And the bigger this gap, the bigger the gap between your model and the data, the worse these indices. Right. That's to simplify it.
I think we talked about goodness of fit
Yeah.
in stats too.
Sphericity?
Okay.
Is that the correct term?
Sphericity, no, that is something else.
Okay.
That is something else. But well, you'll see. We'll talk more about it. So I don't want to waste too much time. Then I might even look a little bit at the factors, but just again, right? I'm now assuming I'm just kind of skimming this, right? So then I'm like, all right, this is what they did. Okay, all right, great. And this is what's interesting is that's also why I chose this article for you all to read, right? This is a confirmatory factor analysis, right? So it's a little bit different than what we did now, but we will do one of these later on in the course. And what then they show here is, all right, now I'm curious, they have a 4-factor model, a single factor model, and second order model. Or so these are 3 different assumptions, right? This assumes 4 different factors. This one assumes 1 factor. And this one assumes a factor above and then a factor underneath, right?
So the 4-factor, that would be okay, so that goes to the scree plot, and we're choosing at the bend 4 factors that everything loads onto, and then is that what they mean by the 4 factors? So in other words, where the data loads on the
Yes, so you
on the
yeah.
Varimax rotation.
Yeah, so again, here they didn't actually hold on.
Because I think you talked
they
about it
didn't.
in one of the videos that if you eliminate, maybe I'm conflating something, but if you eliminate one of the questions, no, I am conflating something because that doesn't
Yeah,
get
so
rid of
you
it.
know what, I'm not going to talk about this too much because this is actually the more complicated way of doing it. The
Oh.
factor analysis. But because here we say exactly how we think it's gonna be, right? And then we specify that model. In the exploratory factor analysis, the one that we did last week and that we do this week, we kind of let the program figure it out, right? The program is telling us what's the best rotation, right? And then we just say, which rotation do we choose? But then it's, you know, based on what the data, the data drives the model in the exploratory analysis. Confirmatory is like, we have a theory and then we try to confirm it. And that's why then we pay attention to these fit indices, because those tell us how well it fits, right? And then there's a bunch of other stuff here, but this is a good way of seeing it, but also it can be confusing if we go too much into details. For right now, at the end of this course, you guys will be like, "Oh, okay, great, I know this one." So all right, then the next thing what I probably would look at is, all right, what are the descriptive statistics, just to see. Okay, get an eye on how this is. All right, you know, some correlations, right? Maybe I'm really interested. Okay, authentic leadership. Oh, that's 7. Let me see here. Let's just see, that correlates well with work alliance, open communication. Yes, learning and development, progress and results. Okay, cool. And then also transformational leadership has also high correlations. And obviously transformational authentic leadership correlate 0.8, right? So I'm like, okay, just based on the data, this is a very high correlation. Right? So we have a sample with employees and we have a sample with the leaders. Okay, let's see. Oh, interesting. Authentic leadership transformation leadership also correlates very high with the leader sample. All right, great. And then I might not even dive more into this, right? At this point, just because I'm skimming it. Then I'll go, all right, how do they do their analyses?
That scared me.
Yes, yeah, that's a
Figure
lot.
one.
And I could see how this is a little bit scary, right? And so what this is, and maybe actually want to break this apart. We have,
We did something similar in stats too, but it was more like,
Very simplified.
yeah,
Even
two
the one that had,
bubbles with
right.
15 rectangles.
okay,
We
whoa,
did do that one that had 24 questions and that was
Mm.
4.
okay.
So it was almost like just this first slice is that what we
Mhm.
did.
Right.
And then there was a whole lot more over here.
Yes. So I'm trying to get this pen going here. Ah, you can, wait a minute. There we go. All right. So there's a lot going on, but you could, so first of all, the boxes are the actual items, right? And did you guys know that?
Yeah, the
Mhm.
questions on the yeah.
Yes. Right? So these 3 questions form the construct working alliance, right? And in structural equation modeling, we just, by drawing these arrows, basically tell the program that these 3 together form this construct here, which is working alliance. And the same thing happens for the other items here. And therefore we have 4 constructs.
So that is what you asked us in the homework, right? When those questions correspond to the oval box, what would you call the
Yes,
questions that correspond? Yes.
yes, what would you call it? All right.
Yeah.
Now, mind you, in here, we did a confirmatory analysis, right? What we did for the homework was an exploratory factor analysis, but the conceptually, it's very similar, right? Except that the calculation here is a little bit different, right? Because we actually say, hey, these three are working alliance.
Yeah.
Whereas,
I'm just saying the naming convention is the
yes, yep. Now, this was the first order, and I talked a little bit earlier about the second order, and you see here, second order is coaching-based leadership, right? You see here these arrows, right? And actually, you see now, I didn't even read really the theory part yet, right? If I was just skimming this, right? I just know, okay, coaching-based, these are the four things that form this factor.
I
Right.
see. Yeah.
And maybe I would, let's we can go look. I'm not going to go back, but basically that's what their theory will what they talk about in the theory. And in a first sample, sorry, the first study, they just try to hash this out more. And does this actually? They basically created this, right? They created this measure.
Is structural, I forget what it's called, but what you're is also called path analysis.
Okay, yes, path analysis is a part. Yes, it's part of the structural equation modeling.
Structural equation modeling, yeah.
And I will get there right now. This here is what we call the measurement model. I'm gonna butcher it. Hold on. Make this nice. Okay. So this is the measurement model. Let's see. God, I can grab it. Okay. Never mind. Well, guess what? Can you guys explain to me what psychological capital? Do you guys mind explaining that to me a little bit more?
So is based on what we're staring at, psychological
Yeah,
capital
yeah,
is self-efficacy, hope, reliance, and optimism.
Yes.
And then the arrows between them, we're not getting into mediators and moderators, right? Is that
Well, okay, I will get there. So this is
okay?
this is the measurement model. This is the measurement model for psychological capital.
Okay.
Okay. So right, which these each measures hope. So that whole area here is the measurement model for psychological capital. Right. And then Amy, I'll put you on the spot as well. How do we measure? Well, you know what? No. How do you think
Yeah.
work engagement? How do we measure work engagement?
Well, so that's two concepts, right?
All right, let's see. Let's put Amy on the
I guess, if it's related to what's in the circles, vigor, I can't
It says
abs
absorption
absorb, I don't know, and
and
dedication.
Yeah,
Mhm.
you're challenging us not only to read but to see.
Right. And then also enroll performance and
Enroll, yeah, and
extra role performance.
Yes.
Oh, that's funny that it's moving it's not
Yeah,
keeping.
because he's drawn what he's done. Yeah, that's
Oh, it's like a
convention of
layover.
the Zoom. Yeah.
Yes, and darn
Got it.
Zoom. So, all right, Amy, that's exactly what I would have guessed too, right? But and then I was a little bit confused. So this is the measurement model for work engagement, but this and this could also be that measurement model, right?
Or a
Now,
different aspect of it, in-role performance and extra role performance. So
well,
is
look,
in-role performance kind of like what you have been tasked to do in a job, and then extra role performance is some things that you take on your own?
let's go. So now here we know that this is a measurement model for in-role performance, right? This
Mhm.
is a measurement model for extra role performance. Okay, and before I move, I want to do something else. Let me see if I can clear all this. Let me do this.
Yeah, if you're in the whiteboard, you should be able to clear it.
Right. Yeah, all drawings. There we go. Now here's the thing. The the path analysis, right?
Mhm.
And this is what we call the structural model, right? Those are actually the relationships between the constructs, right? So,
Mm.
right? So whatever. So if we wanted, we could have just made an average score for coaching-based leadership and throw this in here as a box, right? But because we are so fancy and we have this model, right? We're making all this to come up with this score here. And so this is a score that's basically adjusted for the measurement errors. So this way is a more precise score. All right. Same thing for psychological capital, it's a more precise score. And same thing for work engagement. Right. And what we do now is we just look at these relationships between, so we have coaching-based leadership, the impact on work engagement. Then we have the coaching-based leadership impact on psychological capital and psychological capital impact on work engagement, right? And at the same time, we also have this mediation going on here, right? So we have from coaching-based, we got a direct effect on work engagement, and we have an indirect effect on work engagement via psychological capital.
So we pay a lot of attention to which way the arrows are pointing.
Yes. Yes, you got to pay a lot of attention to that. That being said, the way you point the arrow is your theory.
Oh,
The way you point your arrow, because in this instance, this is all survey data that's captured at the same time. So what a simpler way to say this is a regression coefficient from coaching-based leadership to psychological capital. Okay, a regression coefficient, or you could also think of it as almost like a correlation, right? It could also go the other way. You could also draw it the other way, and it will also be 0.3. Okay. So that's basically their second study, right? Is their question about, hey, has coaching-based leadership, does that have an impact on work engagement? Right? That's not a substantial question, and that's why this is the structural model. Now, here is my question for us, and we kind of thought about it as this is an arrow from work engagement on extra role performance. And the question is, I think this is a structural path here. This is not a measurement path, right? They're not saying these two performances are measuring work engagement. They're saying engagement impacts in-role performance and impacts extra-role performance. You see now that right, mathematically it's the same thing, right? But conceptually it's a different idea, right? Oh, and then the other thing that indicates this too is you see here they have this arrow that goes from coaching-based leadership to extra role performance. All right. Now, I don't know. I'm not gonna go look for it, but the question for me would be, did they also draw an arrow? Did they test an arrow from coaching-based leadership to in-role performance? And did they just leave it out because it was not statistically significant or not? Right? So those are those are the questions too that we could look at as well. So we'll go into the method section and kind of figure this out. But do you have any questions before I move away from this?
Well, only one, and maybe it's a silly question. If we were to, if say they did want to draw a line from coaching-based leadership to in-role performance, is there some convention that has you not wanting to cross the other arrows?
In terms of the drawing?
Yeah, do you have to do it in such a way that it doesn't?
No, not that I know of.
Okay, I know that was a silly question. I just wanted to know.
No, no, that's a good question. Not that I
Okay.
know of, but it's more like, you know, how can you make it look where it's easier to understand? Right? And you'll see
It is a
some of
little,
the,
it based the way that you just described it, that actually looks like the study, and you can learn the most from actually looking at this one diagram.
of here. This-
Yeah,
Yeah. Well, yes, yes. That's why personally I like these visuals. You know, the structure equation to have a visual. You could also display this as a table. But you know, it's a little bit more
dry.
yeah, exactly. It's a little drier. This is more, and it's also funner. Like you know, when you are working on a theory, right? If you work for a dissertation, right? You can draw. What I'm a visual thinker, so I like to draw stuff, and then I like to move it around and think, well, does this impact that, or does it this impact this, or you know, and sometimes it's chicken and egg, right? It's they interact, so that's kind of a lot to model as well. Let's go look here really quick. Work engagement. Oh yeah, we kind of knew that. 3 dimensions, right? Vigor, dedication, and absorption. Okay. And then they have in-role and extra-role. Okay, so here now it's crystal clear, right? There are two different constructs. And let's go back here. Sorry, I'm looking for the. Okay. Work engagement plays a full mediating role between CBL and in-role performance, and a partial mediating role between CBL and extra-role performance. Right? So that's the M3. So what you see here, and I don't want to talk about too much at a time, but you basically what to me what's really cool about this structural equation modeling is that you have different models, M1, M2, M3, M4, right? Where they test different assumptions, right? And then you can compare the fit indices of these different models, right? and you can say, okay, which one of these actually fits the data the best, right? And for
So
example,
if
if
we're looking at that, would it be M3 or no?
yes, if you look, so RMSCA, you want a lower number is better. And then these four, a number close to 1 is good. And then this one are absolute values. So you just want to have a lower number, right? So this is so basically this M3 has the lowest number, so it would mean this is the best model of these four in regards to this indicator, right? And it can be that one is better. It sometimes it's a mixed bag, right? But typically they kind of go in the same direction, right? But long story short, yes, and that's what that's what you see here. The fitting is confirmed robustness of M3, right? With all the fittings meeting the criteria as table 7 shows, right? So basically they say, all right, whatever we modeled there seems to be to fit the data the best. Right? But then they say, all right, we took M3 and compared to the fourth model. The assumes working engagement plays a full mediating role between CBL and inner role and extra performance, and that PSYCAP plays a partial mediating role, right? Also represents a good fit of data with significant links between the variables, right? And now they say, this is interesting, right? They compare M3 and M4, right? Not the 9.88. This is this, where is it at? Yes, you see the 1553 minus the 1554, that's that 9.88, right? So there's a way to test, is that a significant difference or not? And now they said there's not significant, right? So basically M3 and M4, just depending on this chi-square goodness of fit test, they're about the same, right? They're statistically not different. However, the M3 has a little bit better fit indices, right? And that's what they're actually writing here, right? Considering that M3 also really better fit to data than our research model with significant difference between two models, significant ratio between the values, we opted for M3, which assumes that PSYCAP, right? And now they put it back into their theory, right? Because this is the best model, that's why we conclude, right? And so now I might be, let's say, I don't know, see, that's when it gets interesting, right? If I don't have a particular interest in this topic, I'm gonna be like, okay, whatever, right? Okay, makes sense to me. The data makes sense. However, if I was like really feeling emotional about this M3 model, right? Or maybe the M4 model was dear to my heart, I might try to see, well, what arguments can be made for the M4, right? Or for M1 for that matter, right? And then we have the whole mediation analysis, right? And then we have a general discussion, right? But you kind of see, now we went a little bit more details, right? But that it kind of gives you an idea of, I would actually pretty soon look at the data to see, well, what did they do? And then look at how did they interpret, did they do craftsman wise, did they do a solid job? And if they did, then I'm thinking, okay, what substance wise, what are they saying here? And then, I might, I might have a question about how they interpreted certain data, but typically it's pretty, there's kind of a way to do this, right? There's a system to it, and then, if you feel somebody doesn't follow the system, then you can criticize them on that, or you say, no, it makes sense to me as well. And that's that. Now let's go look real quick. Right, this study theoretically contributes to CBL theory development by exploring conceptualizing the attributes, the process, inherence development, right, right, and that some strengths and limitations. Let's say what they say about their first strengths, right? conceptual, the reviewers provided, followed by an outline of existing management leadership scores. So second, we collect in different countries from different sources, right? The strength is the validation of both employees and leaders, yes, right? And then we had a measurement model, blah, blah, blah. Two-star conduct in different settings, right? And the fifth strength is the inclusion of ongoing psychological processes, right? So that we also looked at the relationship linking CBL to in-role and ex-role performance. All right, limitations. First, the 5 Spanish-speaking countries considered state may not be representative of all the countries where Spanish is the primary language. Thus, more representative yourself have industry epic our results. Free research should adapt and test the ability to scale in non-Spanish speaking countries support the use of scale. So if you're looking for a dissertation idea, you could, it's in English, right? The leaders was not used in second study. Okay. Right, and then you also future research should continue the use of CBLS to broaden our understanding of the coaching-based leaders' role in organizations and examine its predictive role in different relevant outcomes, such as job satisfaction, job commitment, goal attainment, and objective performance metrics. Right. One question I would just have is, I mean, I'm assuming that they did the study in Spanish?
It did say that they did it in Spanish and then they translated it.
Yeah, okay. Yes. Yeah. So for me, like, let's say if I was really interested in this coaching-based leadership style, for me, and actually I am, for me now the question is, hold on a second. Yeah, how much of this would I want to replicate or not? Oh yeah, and then one thing, so I showed you this way. Do you want me to show another way of how a professor I knew read articles?
Yes.
So he would go like this. Oh, okay. What's about? Okay, who were? Okay, who are they citing? Did they cite me? Did they cite me? And they said, okay, yes, good guys, right? Like that, or they would just look, yeah, and not necessarily like I'm making a joke now, right? But not necessarily also did they cite me, but hey, who are they citing? Like,
Mhm.
is this? Oh yeah, okay, I know this guy, Lutan. Okay, they're aware of this work. All right, then they know Schauffele.
I think we would have to have a little more confidence in what we were doing to be
Right.
able to know if they're citing the right, studies or
Mhm.
individuals.
Yeah, and I mean, it's not necessarily just to knowing exactly which ones, but just to get an idea of, hey, are they what, what are they aware? And yes, to your point, that's like when you're really familiar with a field, right? You start more paying attention to this type of stuff, right?
I
That
could see
wasn't
when we're
one.
doing our,
No, I
when
was
we're
just
doing our
gonna,
literature review, sorry, we could start to see, if we look at the reference list, we'll start to see authors over and over again.
Yes. Yes.
I also wanted to say that that was the first time that I went through an article where the math made more sense than the words. It almost seemed like the words were a lot extra, and that one picture and the way that you broke it down was actually the entire study, because when I read it, it was actually everything you just said about that one figure.
Yeah. Yeah. Now they have to show, right? They explain a lot more. Why do we think that this is how this figure should be drawn, right? We could do a whole exercise and set it all up differently, and you know, and that's the thing where that can also be the danger about these models when you don't have good theoretical thinking first, you can get lost because the arrows can go wherever you want them to go, they will go. And that's why it makes sense to say, hey, okay, what do I think? What is the theory? And then, okay, I'm gonna test this, model 1, and then I'm gonna test this, model 2, and I'm gonna test this, right? Model 3, model 4, and then, and maybe 5 or 6, but it's good to have ahead of time to know what am I hypothesizing, right? And then you can really target it and test it.
So does the clarity of the figure help you to assess whether or not the study is run well?
Um,
Or is that dangerous too, to make that assumption?
no, yeah, that's maybe a little bit dangerous too, but I will say this. If you see a picture of the million boxes, and this one is kind of borderline, but this one is a lot of it is measurement model, right? If we go back real quick, basically what I'm trying to say, if there's a lot of stuff going on, sometimes it's too much, and it's easy to do too much, right? But here we know, hey, all this is basically one box. All this is basically one box, right? This here is one box, right? The what I like about the way they present it is just the outside is the measurement model, and really we have these 5 constructs that are as far as the structure goes, right? So it's not too complicated. But if it goes, if yeah, typically simpler is better, at least in my mind. And yeah.
This article was more complicated to me before you explained it the way you just explained it.
Okay, yeah, great. Well, I hope that a little bit to it. And, you know, I realized that this was a bit more to the, this will be again, I just picked these articles because to me, they're really good examples of how to present the data so that you guys see what it could look like. And plus something that you're interested in topic wise. Hopefully. All right. Well, we're almost hitting the hour here. Are there other questions or comments?
I don't have any.
I don't have any.
Okay. I'll make just one last comment. The article for this week is really a bit of a classic and goes a little bit further to say, all right, now let's say we have an assessment, it works well from a psychometric point. And now we want to know how valid is it, right? And the different aspects of validity, right? And that's really important for us too, as industrial organizational psychologists, to know, well, what do we do with it? What can we do with it, and what is maybe a little bit on the edge, and what are things that shouldn't be done?
That's the article from 1955.
No, that's one from 1995.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Again, we were looking at a lot of articles.
That's another classic right there. All right. Well, I wish you all, thank you for coming, first of all. Enjoy your questions and your comments, and wish you a happy Memorial Day weekend.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Filled with nothing but homework. No, just kidding.
An extra day
No,
to do homework on Monday.
It is. Yeah, that is. So I'm sorry, just really briefly for clarification, you have opened the assignments, all of them early, or just
Just
some?
the discussions, right?
I opened all of them except the quizzes,
Okay.
And
Mhm.
the reason why I didn't open up the quizzes is because I was told that the way we keep attendance is by activity each week. And some people, ask me if I could open it up earlier, but if you're not active, you'll be dropped from the course. And I just want to make sure that you're doing something each week so that you don't get dropped. Let's just say that.
Okay, so we can,
Hopefully,
I mean, if in a parallel universe we have additional time, we could go ahead and complete the more substantial parts of the classwork.
yeah, you could complete all the exercises and all the discussions if you wanted to. And the final one.
Can you talk, now you're going over and I'm sorry. Can you talk about, you talked about the final one last time?
Yes, so the final one is a review of an instrument, a scale that you choose, of your choosing, and you just discuss it and you present it. And it's similar to, let's say, the post that you did a week ago, right? Where you just talk about what are the different what's the scale about? What are the different indicators for the validity of the scale? What are what are the psychometric indicators? Is that satisfactory or not? Typically, it is if it's been published somewhere, right? But it might not be, and then you can discuss it and highlight some strengths and maybe some weaknesses of the scale. And that's just a 5 minute video, and you'll see more information in the hold on, let me show you here in the module 8, right? Where it's 5 to 7 minutes, where you can do the focus is really on an oral presentation, right? So for example, if you have if you have an article, you can do it the way that I did it now, that the conversation we had, right? If you want to create a presentation, you can do that as well, but you don't have to go that route. What's more important is that you can describe the construct, validity, reliability, the evidence of the measure, right? And analyze that and be able to say, why is it, what do you think about it as a professional, right? And maybe there's some suggestions for improving the measure or for some further studies, right? Let's say, for example, these guys, we would say, well, it looks pretty good. We can go more details, and then future studies, we could say, well, tried it maybe in English, or tried it in different languages, or maybe we could also say, maybe not necessarily the instrument, but the conclusions about the constructs. Maybe that works different in a bigger company, in a bigger organization, right? That would be just one thought that I would put out. And then maybe in terms of ethical considerations, it's this is honestly maybe a little bit more for the tests or assessments, right? When you talk about this, but what could be ethical implications of the measure that you're discussing?
Thank you.
And yeah, you're welcome. There, it's just basically a file and upload the file.
So so that's not a discussion, like other classmates are not gonna watch this.
Well, I'm just, what, I originally had thought this as being not necessarily a discussion, but you guys can see it. Let me think about that. No, because it would be good if everybody saw it.
Is it due the last day of class?
What's the last date? 23rd?
I think so. Let's see.
Maybe due to the last day of class, yes.
June 23rd, yeah.
Yeah, June 23rd.
That's a bummer. I'll leave it like this for now, because I didn't say anything else.
There was something else. There was another class we had that you were able to see everybody's videos and you did not have to comment on them individually.
Do you remember what the setup was?
No, we don't get to, you just showed us the backstage. We don't get to see,
Right.
we don't get to see that part, but I do know that it was done before.
Okay, you know what? Yeah, all right. I'm gonna ask, because that would be kind of nice to see it.
Do you remember which, oh, Amy, I don't know if you were in that class. That I think it was actually,
It
was either
doesn't sound familiar.
yeah, it was either Dr. Lopez's class or I don't think it was Dr. Ansari. It might have been Dr. Fuchs.
All right, I'll look into this.
Okay. If I do come across it in